Hey, glad you joined me again. I'm already ready to read. I have my reading glasses on already. I have the book in my hand. Last time we read together, we heard about Joshua as a leader that God provided who brought the people who had been captive in Egypt into the land of God's promise. And we ended with talking about how another leader was still coming, how this leader pointed to another one as part of God's plan. What I'm going to read today is called The Teeny Weeny True King. And it's a story from 1 Samuel 16 in the Bible, where Samuel anoints David as king. God's people had a new land, but now they wanted a king as well. Other people had kings, they didn't. But God is your king, Samuel told them. He was the prophet in that time. God is the one who looks after you best. Now, we want a real king, they said, one we can see. God knew that a king might not be kind to his people or look after them as well as he would. But God's people didn't care. They wanted a king and they wanted him now. So God gave them a king. He was called Saul, and he seemed like a good king at first. But he became proud and stopped listening to God. He didn't obey God in the end or love God with his whole heart. Saul can't help me with my plan, God said. I need a king who loves me and will teach my people to love me. I need a true king. God had just the one in mind. Go to Bethlehem, God told Samuel. You'll find the new king there. Samuel's job was to listen to God and tell people what God was saying, what God said. And so here's a picture. I think there's a servant bringing something in, but there you see the king at his ease, King Saul, just thinking about himself and not about God. And that's why God had to find somebody else. So Samuel went to the little town of Bethlehem. God told Samuel to go to Jesse's house. God was going to choose one of Jesse's sons to be the new king. Now Jesse had 7 strong sons. There's a string of them, see? 7 strong sons. Now in those days, if you were going to be the king, you didn't have to be the richest or the cleverest, although that was always nice. You had to look like a king, which meant you had to be the tallest and the strongest. And it still is that way a bit. We pick the tallest and the strongest. So you could carry the longest swords and the biggest armor and defeat everyone. And it didn't hurt to be handsome either. Samuel asked Jesse to bring him each son in turn. So Jesse brought the oldest, tallest, strongest son. This must be the new king, Samuel thought. He looks like a king, right? Look at him. He's even showing us his muscles right there in the picture. I'm strong. I'm tall. But God didn't choose him. You're thinking about what he looks like on the outside, God told Samuel, but I'm looking at his heart, what he's like on the inside. So Jesse showed Samuel his next oldest, tallest, strongest son, but God did not choose him either. In fact, God didn't choose any of the 7 sons. Samuel said, "Is that all?" Jesse laughed. "Oh, well, there's the youngest one, but he's just the weakling of the family. He's only teeny." "Bring him," said Samuel. Jesse's youngest son came running up, and God spoke quietly to Samuel. "This is the one." His name was David. He has a heart like mine, God said. It is full of love. He will help me with my secret rescue plan, and one of his children's children's children will be king. And that king, the king, and that king will rule the world forever. Samuel anointed David's head with oil, which was a special way to show that you are God's chosen one. You will be the new king one day, Samuel told him. And sure enough, when he grew up, David became king. It's quite the interesting story to read in the Bible. God chose David to be king because God was getting his people ready for an even greater king who was coming. Once again, God would say, "Go to Bethlehem. You'll find the new king there." And there, one starry night, in the town of David, Bethlehem, 3 wise men would find that king. So here's a picture of David when he came running from having taken care of the sheep. And there's a picture of what the anointing with oil on his forehead might look like by Samuel. And that's the end of that next chapter. Join me again to hear some more. Until then, shalom and serenity.